Okay, it seems like I will start. Definitely, let's be respectful of those who are already here. Good evening, everyone. My name is Yoni Mizrahi. I'm the Director General of Emek Shaveh. I'll say a few words by way of an introduction. Emek Shaveh is an organization that is preoccupied with archaeology and various antiquities sites. We believe that heritage sites are relevant to the rights of the public, rights of people, and we should definitely protect these rights as well. We're extremely active in the area of Jerusalem, what is happening in the city of David, and obviously in Silwan and the Old City. And we're also a part of the coalition that is active against the cable cart and definitely is part of this conference. This conference is held thanks to the supporters and the donors who contribute to Emek Shaveh. Some of them are the European Union, the New Israel Fund, other countries and other funds that are supporting us. Quite naturally, this conference represents the position of Emek Shaveh, and the speaker is not necessarily that of the sponsors, but I believe that our sponsors, be it the European Union or the New Israel Fund and others, no doubt we feel that we share with them a real partnership and a vision, a shared worldview when it comes to the way we view Jerusalem, as it has to be a pluralistic place, sharing values such as human rights that we have obviously in common with our partners. So thank you to all the sponsors. Some of them are with us for many years. They're not just sponsors, they're really partners along the way with us. In addition to this, of course, there's a lot of work that is being done by Emek Shaveh, and this is the place to say thank you to all the staff, Shani, Uri, Chemi, and Talia, Mohamed, who's on the team, and Victor, of course, all of whom have been very busy in organizing this conference, which required a lot of work and time. So thank you to you all. I'd like to also thank the speakers who agreed to be here more or less from every corner of this country to speak in this conference and express their opinions. Nurili Sofri, who will be here soon, she was a partner. She's the moderator of this conference, and she shared the thinking process with us. And of course, thank you to all those who've come and to many activists, thousands of activists, who in the last 2 years have all grouped together around the struggle against the cable cart. I would like to wish us all a very fruitful conference, and I'd like to call upon Nurit, please. I need some help here with the logistics. Good evening. Driving here took me at least 2 hours on this Thursday. Michael Kimmelman, the well-known architecture critic, visited Jerusalem this past summer and warned us that the city is going to change forever. The venture of the cable car he described as those cars crossing the heart of the place that is called the Holy Basin and would turn it into a Jewish Disneyland. His impressions were published on the front page of the newspaper, and they caused a lot of discussion around the world. We have a problem hearing the speaker because she's speaking to a mic that is not working. The landscape of Gay Ben Hinnom, Mount Zion, City of David, and the Ophel is not a matter of visibility or observability. We're talking about a cultural value and a place in the two senses, a physical site and also the meaning of holiness. There's no other historic city in the world that allowed to establish such a cable car system in its center of its heritage. And if we go back to quote Kimmelman, right, and if we are to quote Kimmelman, criticism should not sum up to aesthetic summations or parlor meetings, but to take active part in the struggle for a more just world. End of quote. My name is Niruit Lisovsky. I'm a member of the Faculty of Architecture in the Technion. I'm a landscape architecture and a researcher of cultural landscapes. You can see a drawing that was prepared by Ari Dvir, the architect of the National Park Authority, a few months after the Six-Day War, and turned over the years into the visual image of the national park and a central tool in formulating the supra temporal dimensions of the Holy Basin as a historic site. It's okay now. The protest against the program includes the most senior architects, researchers of Jerusalem, the Israel Association of Landscape Architecture, the Society for the Protection of Nature, Adam Teva Vadin, the Council for the Preservation of Sites, UNESCO Israel, to whom 35 of the most senior historians and architects in the world have joined in contemporary concepts. This is a governmental coup almost. A special thank you to Yoni Mizrahi and Shani Rubin for organizing this evening. The members of Emek Shaveh have been leading recently all the various processes of the protest and managed to consolidate an academic and public front. Thank you to the distinguished speakers and to you, the audience, who's here to listen and to be heard. As a backdrop for what I have to say, I would like to open with a short description of the program and a few comments concerning the space where the cable car will be built. The cable car project is a transportational solution for the problem of accessibility and traffic overload in the old city, 135,000 visitors a week. According to Harley, the various alternatives of transportation, buses, shuttles, light and heavy trains are unsatisfactory, and a cable car would allow free passage of visitors, tourists, residents, and merchants. In a long-term view, the idea is to create an interface with the existing transportation system, but as of today, the Ministry of Transport is not at all a partner to the discussion and deliberations. The overall map is 1.4, including 73 cars that would lead and carry 3,000 passengers an hour in each direction. We're talking about 14 to 18 towers at a changing altitude of above 20 meters. The area of every floor is 500 to 600 square meters. The estimated cost is 220 million shekels. The presence in the field is 24/7, but the cable car would not operate on during the weekends, the holidays, or in the dark hours, and only very partially in the winter when there are storms, it won't be functional. The track, the delineation starts with the old train station, Station A over the Bible Hill to Station B where the depot is, and from there it would change the angle eastward over Geben Hinnom to Mount Zion, and from there to some of the lots of the Angelicanto Church above residential areas in Silwan, all the way to the final station, Station D, very close to the Wailing Wall. And in the second stage, the idea is to extend the cable car to the Shiloach pole to Mount of Olives and Gath Shemane. The final station necessitates the elevation of 2.5 meters above what has been approved by the National Council without going into the visual and the architectural considerations that would pertain to this modern building and the old city. The very access to the Wailing Wall through the Kedem center or compound would be problematic when the visitor would go down from the roof to the ground through the exhibition areas of the visitor center that expresses the unilateral political approach that is controversial. The cable car is not just a functional transportational solution, as those who initiated tried to argue, but to a large extent a significant product of a political reality that characterizes Israel of the 21st century, that seeks to vanish the universal character of the city and to impose the Jewish narrative of Jerusalem. Nir Barkat, the former mayor of Jerusalem, today member of Knesset on behalf of the Likud, told Kimmelman that the cable car is a Zionist project that aims to bring the visitors to the city of David, which is the ultimate proof for our right to this land. End of quote. Those who initiated the cable car project point at similar ventures in the world, but these are not at all similar to the physical and symbolic context of Jerusalem. The architect of the cable car compared the stations of the cable car to the glass pyramid of Henri, the well-known architect in the Louvre Museum in Paris. He argued that that too was the target of public criticism, but today everyone loves it. But the problem, as Kimmelman mentions, is that Jerusalem is not Paris. In Paris or in London, we can only assume no authority or committee would have believed that the Jewish cemetery could be moved in order to build a train station, as the Karai community has been offered, as we read this morning in the newspapers. The program this evening includes 2 sessions. The first one will be devoted to the architectural and landscape aspects of the program, and the second session would illuminate aspects of society, spirit, and culture. At the end, the deputy mayor would present the advantages of the project, after which we will have a discussion and questions would be given to the speakers. I would like to invite the first speaker, architect Rivka Gutman, the representative of the Israel Association of United Architects in Israel, Bezalel Academy of Art and Design speaker, researcher of the concept of the public in contemporary architecture. Yeah. What lies here at the very center of this controversy is the position of the Israel Association of United Architects vis-à-vis the Cabinet of Governmental Housing to approve actually the neutralization of the status of Jerusalem when it comes to any basic human needs to belong to what lies beyond. The working tools, our working tools, are in an ongoing flux between social patterns of the many, which lie in the possession of the private and the public, and physical patterns, and vice versa. In other words, the knowledge to contemporaneously read both the ideological and the physical space. Any intervention in the physical space, there's another dimension which is cultural, political, and ideological. Culture is the creation of the many in public. The project of the cable car in Jerusalem is distinct in its extraordinary social status. The site of the program is the embodiment of publicness vis-a-vis the very convoluted, strange processes which aim to bypass the highway of the public discussion and to impose from above, top down, a private joke at the expense of the public and with the contribution of the public money. Okay, I get it. Architecture of pilgrimage. Pilgrimage is a universal cultural ritual of convening in public, and as we know, the status of Jerusalem as a site of pilgrimage preceded its status as a capital. In this particular pattern, Jerusalem is a preliminary reference in this pattern. This pilgrimage has an architecture, and from the dawn of history, the decision makers took it into account as a prerequisite, as a sine qua non, which is trivial and obvious. In the very short history of our national existence as sovereign of this city, especially nurtured was this dimension, and that shaped to a large extent and with great effort the path to operate based on consensus and a broader perspective of previous and future generations. Bypassing the statehood element in the meaning pertaining to the rationale upon which the law of construction and building is based, organizational culture of resolution of conflicts, actually brings us to privatization of the statehood. Is Jerusalem a private yard of someone where one can position a car villa, namely a mobile house? At the moment, there's no legal tool to prevent that because you can bypass any law when it comes to Jerusalem. Status of Jerusalem as a reference is based on this spatial pattern as a holy site, namely it is distinct and distinguished to which everyone arrives as a pilgrim. A lot before the Ottoman rule that recognized the atemenos, this spatial pattern of the elevated city, the acropolis, has been accepted as a distinct object to which one has to arrive. The romantic drawing of Roberts from the late 19th century describes the temenos pattern of Jerusalem as an influential reference that is etched in everyone's memory because it stems from a basic pattern that can be understood as an ideology and can be felt by the senses without mediating texts. A monument is always that which everyone agrees on its monumentality. As such, it is etched as a reference. And this is also the way by which the British rule enacted the spatial status of the old city as a place of reference that is very rare and holy, as a gem, as a piece of jewelry that lies on a velvet cushion. All the statutory documents of the old city is an expression of this frame that makes it distinct, and that is the Holy Basin. The Israeli sovereignty fixated the status of this area as a national park that one cannot build in its scope and shape Jerusalem as a reference that is above any rule. based on the deep recognition of the sources of identity that is binding with its respect to every nation. In these realities of different faiths, various creative spatial ideas were created, and there are many rituals that were huddled in it by the various faiths, resulting from spatial negotiations and choreographies of status quo that only strengthened its status. You can see the model of Konrad Schick that describes, I don't know if you can really see the fine different hues, but it shows the various areas that are devoted to different communities, different faiths, people of different communities, to allow in the very same space the arrival of pilgrims of different types. They even prepared a map that enters every area, and you can actually see in great detail the affinity, the spatial, physical, immediate affinity of every faith to be to a ceiling, to a wall, to a tile, to a window. It is that detailed, and the statehood or the government understood the importance of the status quo in the physical space and took it to that fine resolution. The cable car project challenges all that. The frame has become redundant. The frame has become redundant. Who needs a reference when one can correct mistakes and bypass the statehood element and route to every target to build something totally surreal with a very rich technical specs and aggressive marketing as the last developers of any real estate without any responsibility to the public interest involved. The public entities, all of them, the Authority for the Development of Jerusalem, the Jerusalem Municipality, the Ministry of Tourism, and the Ministry of Jerusalem and Heritage, initiated and advanced the cable card project as if it was a family business in their own private yard. The goal was indeed very noble, and indeed there are some consensus concerning it. You see the declared goal. Nobody argues over it. Yeah. Okay. Nobody argues over that goal. Who would refuse to make a better access to the old city? And this is how the idea was born that led us to this statutory process that would trample the highway of the process of construction and planning that includes the hearing of objections to any such process. The process by which this project was advanced is not the proper normal one of the law of construction and building, of planning and construction. The plans were submitted in a shortened process to an instance of the Committee for National Infrastructure when the law allows it to discuss the planning and construction of national infrastructure like water, electricity, waste facilities that are essential and vital to the public by bypassing the hurdles of the required tests in the normal process, such as, and we, the architects, definitely have vast knowledge concerning those tests that every project requires to pass, like urban analyses, usage of the model of the city that would be reliable, in which one can position and examine various alternatives to various proposals, various portfolios of documentation and preservations, influence over the environment, etc. Obviously, the hurdle of the objections of the public that is anchored in the law. And when someone has this a private yard, but also a facade of a joint public interest and a pampering public coffer, one can actually choose such a very prestigious project, mostly for purposes of interior decoration. And I'd like to show you a few documents from the body that led this project. This, you know, finger that is pointing upwards, showing exactly where the stations would be, to make that facade as if there is a lot of thought invested in this. And the only thing that I added to the original document are the red circles that show what has not changed in all those alternatives. Because in all the alternatives, the entry to the old city is through that private project that Nurit showed you earlier. In short, it's mostly for interior decoration, but all those alternatives and all those ways lead indeed to Rome, to this private venture that is also in line with the spirit of real estate developers. But there are problems of accessibility. We all know this. We all experience the transportation problems in Jerusalem. And the Ministry of Transportation, that was not at all a partner to the project of the cable car, has known a long time ago and invested a lot of public money in the preparation and the approval and the development of plans that are of a lot more public in nature in order to solve the problems of accessibility to Jerusalem and mostly to the old city. You know, the two train lines are planned in detail. We funded them and they would lead to the old city. However, as they bring up the argument of the traffic jams, I'm simply showing you here a Waze image. We all know that the traffic jams are not necessarily in the southern part of the old city, but mostly in the northern part of the old city. I'm very tolerant of Google Maps, not Waze only, that's fine. But we also know that if at all, if we want to get to the old city with a cable car, perhaps it should start in the Ben Gurion airport, because in the entry to the city of Jerusalem, as you can see on the left-hand slide, there's no cable car, and you have to enter the entry. And we know that there are problems in the entry to hospitals and workplaces and homes. There are always traffic jams everywhere. So arguing that there are traffic jams en route to the old city, that requires some more thinking, better than that of a plumber that closes a flood here but causes a flood elsewhere. Okay, so we do have that fancy prefab placed in one's yard. But what is that cable car? A cable car is a technological facilities that was invented by mine engineers in order to transport various coals or materials from one place to another. So the idea that a cable car makes it or provides accessibility is true, because already in the 18th century this technology was developed and used. Some sort of a district, sort of an idea that sounds no more than an old joke. An idea that has this in its basic nature as a means of transportation. It is true that a cable car definitely transports visitors in ski sites that have no other way or no other means of access. And it's true that in the third world, in cities such as Caracas, Venezuela, La Paz in Bolivia, and places where there's a different type of statehood or political space, places where the urban solution, the only urban solution that was at least tried, without even going down to the favelas of the crime and drugs, they were forced to use cable car as a solution for urban transportation, but mostly cable cars are used in cities of the third world or in sites where accessibility is truly problematic physically. And we know those examples in Israel too. And I'm showing you here in the pictures how it looks, not in false simulations of marketing agents, but how it would actually look and how it actually looks in different places. So, what will happen to that reference point with the knowledge that would be effaced once that reference is effaced, with the harmed residents of the city, with the pilgrims and the lovers of this city from Israel and around the world? What will become of them? This is exactly what will happen. This is exactly what will happen. This simulation, this illustration, at least what you can see here, that there's no intention to actually present some sort of a false truth. And still, this is a lot closer to what will actually take place when you compare this to the various simulations provided by the planners of the cable car. Thank you.
Mike Turner, teaching in Bezalel and about conservation, and he's the one who brought upon the discourse about conservation. He's been heading the topic of conservation of heritage sites in Israel under the UNESCO. I already want to tell you that lately I've been corresponding with Shani, who sent me CV of all the different speakers, and it's going to take the entire evening if I read everyone's CVs fully, so I'm summarizing them. So, hello, and thank you also, Norit and Rivka, for opening the discussion and even giving an introduction to me that is very much to the point. But now we need to not only talk about the nature, the character, and the visuality of the thing, but also, as was said before me, the values of the place. And not only the values, but also the method, the methodology that we are dealing in conservation. Conservation, as is now seen in Israel, is already, in the past. In a way, it puts this in tools of monument conservation, and we haven't even dealt yet with urban conservation. Will we stay and write the poems about the beautiful landscapes of the Mount of Zion and the speakers quoting poetry? This is an integration between culture and nature, which is the most important thing that is realized in Jerusalem. I just want to tell you that the discussion is about different layers and levels, and I wanted to talk to you now about values. That when we can agree about values, we cannot agree with our interpretation of them. And the third thing on the agenda is sustainability, and the very last thing is about the comprehensive planning. This is the holistic approach that needs to be taken. The values of the place and culture and nature, and I will look at it again later on when it comes to the buried city and the visionary coming to the place, the idea of the pilgrimage that Rivka mentioned, the city walls, spaces, and Jerusalem being connected into the ladder of the world. And we are dealing with a topic that has to do with the value. How do we document these terms of the value? The value is in the layers. It's in the continuousness of things, in the technologies that we have now to deal with, the sustainability, the tradition and the pilgrimage. And already throughout the years, and it was said before me and probably will be said afterwards, is that the statutory plans since the British mandate have been detailing very explicitly the uniqueness and the conservation. And indeed, it goes on in the national plans, in the national master plan, different national master plans throughout the years in the historic city. And so each one of these master plans indicates a certain value that is in the place. So in the master plan 35, they recognize the old city very clearly and its surroundings. The national master plan number 1 has to do with the importance of the plan. The number 6, also a plan planned by Arya Dvir, was dealt by him. He also talks about landscape, but also the values of the historical sites, religious values, and also traditional values, archaeological values, architectural values that symbolizes an ensemble of landscape. And all of these are in understanding the value. And also in master plan number 9, and also even the 2000, has to do with the basin of the holy city and those site and the values in that site. But how did this all was incepted technically? We have the 4th edition. It is something that is appropriate to be conserved. Do we see any documentation regarding this? No, I haven't found it. It's just a means for a goal, and the goal should be, why should it be sustained? Why should it be conserved? So state of significance, as we say in English when we want to talk about it. It's interesting, nobody wrote a statement of significance when it comes to Jerusalem, as if it's something that goes without saying. But it does not go without saying. In order to to phrase it, we have an intellectual discussion. Then we'll know what we need to conserve. And so when we talk about it, we talk about the definition of the law, a wall, a fence, also something that might be fenced or walled, or the space or the land, not bidimensional, but we are talking about the space of this location of the site. And the 4th edition should also have the topic of why should it be worthy to conservation, and that is missing. And I would like to also say a couple of other words that I should have mentioned before when I was representing the architects in the committee, in the regional committee. There's no goal of the planning committees to develop the land. There are constructors, there is the housing ministry, the committees, the planning committees. It's written in the law that they should supervise the development. There's no objective or goal of developing the land by the planning committees. Second is promising appropriate conditions, preserving each building and making sure that there's historical importance, conserving and developing important places when it comes to nature or beauty. These are objects of plans. Another thing is that it shouldn't be. And so going back to our point is on one hand we have the nature, the urban nature we can talk about, which also indeed in the plan that is proposed we shall preserve the geophytes. It's as if the geophytes are the most critical thing in understanding this landscape, the myopic approach to this, a myopic approach. We are on the verge of the desert, at the shoulder of the city. It is a very special and unique region, this place, that is exactly over Hinnom Valley, and also possible on this part to see that indeed in this tentative plan or tentative list that the State of Israel, indeed we do see development of Jerusalem, of this part of Jerusalem. And so we will speak about Hinnom Valley because I think we must understand its meaning for archaeology and history and subjects that are the attributes of said value through the necropolis, the city of the dead, the water systems, the space of the historical built city, and also the topic of the open spaces of Hinnom Valley. And you also have to understand that this concept of space is something that is not only about fencing a place. This idea of the corner of the city, how do I treat these little corners that are defining the city, which I wouldn't want now to come to the Romans who used to plow in order to enlarge a city, but also the Sanhedrin, the Jewish Sanhedrin, they could not enlarge a city without knowing it and discussing it very deeply. These corners are exactly beyond Hinnom Valley. And also we need to see how far does the path cuts through this place and cuts from these values. But I would also like to add something regarding the space. The topic we're talking about, sky belongs to the air, belongs to the public. We don't talk about it that much. This dome that is created above us is one of the most important things that is really a public area. We are under pressure here when it is threatening us with this building, but the right to this space is unique. And this is something I would like to talk about simply in a couple of words about the value of the valley, because we have on the one hand the sky above us giving us this giving us the obvious and the topography at the bottom built from the valley. The valley in his Jewish culture is defining the city. It is a burial zone. It is a place of vision. And here we can see it. This valley is showing us the focus of the Israelites led by Joshua. It is a buffer between the city and its surroundings. Jerusalem surrounded by mountains, and also look at the skies. The second valley is a burial place, and it is a burial place that can't be really moved. We can't move these burials of the chariots. It is absolutely crazy where it is placed exactly within the park, this understanding of this place. And at the end, there is the question of a place of vision. So that is talking about the topic of Hinnom Valley, of this whole valley and the manure and the tunnels. The speaker is citing but the Bible. What's unique about Hinnom Valley is that there are two entries to the underworld, and there's a question of why is there an entry there. It is told in the Midrash and the biblical story that people from the city should know exactly the meaning of what they did, these entries to hell. So the whole topic of Hinnom Valley is like a warning to us. The last bit is about coming to the place, to the spot, coming to do the pilgrimage. The Logos has changed us. It's revolutionized us because we don't come up to the place. We're at the place. There's no point in coming up, travel to the place. Nobody ever spoke about this. But we see around Jerusalem people coming. Abraham, the patriarchs are coming. Abraham is coming from Hebron. We see Jesus 40 days in the desert. We see people coming up from Beit HaShoeva. We see the red-eye flights of Muhammad the Prophet towards Al-Aqsa, the Temple Mount. And we see it as an integral part of understanding the space. The last is talking about sustainability. Why are we talking about, we are creating a place in order to make a problem, and believe us, we also add more actions and more actions into it. This is not what it used to be like in the history. And specifically, Chaviva Pedzaya wrote a fascinating article about the contradictions between what it says about who should come to perform a pilgrimage. Those who, once it used to be said, those who lived outside the city walls. The second time it says those who see the city walls. On the third time it says a day distance of a day walking from the city walls. And the fourth time it says 3 days distance walking. So each place it says something else. It's all about sustainability. which has already existed even then. And they did indeed said that it used to be in the law when very small number of people did the pilgrimage, but hundreds of years later on, the border became closer and closer to the warning gate until the Jerusalemites could not bear the amount of people coming to visit it. So they wanted to decrease the number of fruits and pilgrims. The question here is also about running the city appropriately, which is not only about moving things into one place. No, sometimes we want to separate them, to share. So, this whole idea of us dealing with coming to the place, the real experience is changing from generation to generation, and we will see completely different things regarding getting to the place. And the whole question of the city walls, it was said also here that it disappeared from us. Apparently, the architect of Kedem compound, it wasn't worthy to him to present the pictures of this place, how the city walls will be hidden by this project. So I would like now, summarizing the bottom and top question. When we're talking about Jerusalem, a city connected together, Rashi says it has nothing to do with the neighborhoods. He's about the axis mundi. This idea that the bottom and top are connected, this is the connection. The connection is about understanding the preservation between the natural preservation topography of the valley and the dome of the heavens, which is public area, and this is the space that we must preserve and conserve. So we must come and say, I will not come to Jerusalem of heaven before I come to Jerusalem of the earth. And Rashi said Jerusalem is built as a city connected together. Jerusalem on the earth will be built as a city that is connected. Well, how will we understand it if we'll not come to it at the bottom? How will we come to it at the top, at the heavens? And I think it expresses the expression of the place and the importance of not getting exactly the damage to the space. And with that, we will be able not only to listen to Psalms, not only read the poet Yehuda Levi, but also leave some space to the next generations to also write new poems. Thank you very much. Please. Please. I just. Hello, my name is Amos Temple. In this situation where I'm standing here in front of you is written in a book I wrote called The Hieroglyphs of the Accidentality, and it recognizes a latent city in Jerusalem, an extinct city. It's the Jerusalem mandatory Jerusalem that was planned following an ideal that is uninterpreted by the rich of the city and its planners. They know the arts, following the arts and crafts. The ideals is pronouncing a protest against disconnecting the people from the derivatives of happiness and derivatives of identity. What I'm trying to tell you, and I'll say it very shortly, Jerusalem is actually this line that you have mentioned. Remind me your name. Your name is David. The ancient world has recognized Jerusalem as a meridian, not a ladder physically, but the ancient world knows that there are cities that are focal strength of vibrations. One of them is Jerusalem. And it's possible to say, and by this I will close, Sir Ronald Storr that came here recognizes what King Solomon recognizes before him, that this city is important in craftivism preservation, in preservation of materialistic common identity that is created through the hands and the heart. I'm sorry, but I have to stop you at this point, and we'll take a short break. Just very shortly. Okay. I'm sorry, speaker is not speaking into a microphone. We'll now take a short break. We will come back here at 6:30.
Because many people would like to talk and ask questions, I think that we'd better start with the second session. There's no reason why not to allow the longest discussion, so we'd be better off starting immediately. We would like to ask everyone to please come in, and we shall soon begin. I think that I should be talking to this mic. That's very true, so that you can hear me. I'd like to say to those who are already here that we have telephone, as it were, for questions. If you want to ask questions, we want to sort of allow you to text message 052. It's read the number very quickly. These are questions that will be later answered by the speakers. It is not instead of questions of people who want to raise or people who would want to use the mic to speak. Quite naturally, many people have a lot to say on the topic. This has become a very charged topic, and we would try to answer as many comments and questions as possible. I do know I would like to ask someone if they can to close the door, and I'd be very thankful if you do. And wait, please, let's move on.
We are changing the order of speakers a bit because of some technical problems. So I am now inviting Fleur Hassan Achoum, Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem, Foreign Relations and Tourism Portfolio in the municipality. She is an advocate, an attorney, and she will talk about making green transport accessible to the old city. Fleur, please. Good evening, everyone. I have to see that my presentation is on. So I'll start now. Good evening, everyone. I see many friends in the crowd, and I think that I am today a minority here because I support the cable car. And so I know that many people here that we have struggled in many other cases together side by side, and I hope we will stay friends and continue struggle together side by side when we do hold the same opinion. I have a lot of appreciation towards many people sitting here who are professionals to a very high level. It's just simply that when it comes to this topic, we disagree, and maybe I have some insights from the municipality insight from the tourism aspect, and I want for a couple of minutes to keep an open mind, and I am certain that if with these people sitting here, we'll have a very cultural discussion. And now I'll start with this project. At the end of the day, is a project. I know you've heard a lot today about how political it is and how it is pushed by political or state factors. And I believe that it is a cultural, transitional, touristic project. And I understand it because I know what is the touristic need today in Jerusalem and what it will look like in the future. So I will start now. We have a state in Jerusalem at the moment which is with 4 million tourists per year. Just to give you a bit of context, what does that mean, 4 million tourists per year? Just this context of what does it mean, 4 million per year? In Copenhagen, they have 40 million tourists per year, okay? I come and I come from a very small place called Gibraltar, the south of Spain. This is where I grew, and I go back to visit quite often. And Gibraltar is a very small place at the south of Spain, and they receive 10 million tourists per year. And we are here in Israel, we have 4 million tourists per year. And I always critique the government for always saying, oh, we're so great, we're so amazing when it comes to tourism. No, we don't even start. We're not at the moment of even start thinking about infrastructure for tourism, because tourism here is very little compared to what it could become for Israel, for the Holy Land, for the Holy City. We are not even at the first step of touching what does it mean to have normal amounts of tourism. So 4 million tourists, and this is how it looks today. The need. Just a minute. No, it doesn't function. I will also say a couple of things. I know that a change, thank you, change is always something very difficult. But this change, I see it as a change for the good. I think that there's a need. I'll explain it. 150,000 visitors per week to the old city. And we have many, many, many events, and about 100. We have 160,000 people coming in domestic tourism, let's call it, or maybe even residents of Jerusalem coming to the old city every year, and 150,000 every week. That's a fact. Okay? Now, this is how sometimes we see things like this in the old city. At the moment in the old city, there is a situation where there is in Mount Zion, there are very few places for buses to stand. This is the way things are. So most of the time, things look like this or like this. This is how it looks like. I can testify to it because I go there often. I have a child who goes to school at the old city. So more than once or twice, I was stuck there for 40 minutes. If those are days of bar mitzvah, well, a full hour just to get out of there. This is how it goes today. You can't argue with facts. So now we have a couple of options, and I'm telling you, options were checked. People checked options of bringing extra buses, shuttle one from the old station. They checked different options. Now they're talking about light rail. But from what I know and checked recently, it's not even at the horizon, the light rail coming even close to the old city. So we don't have many options, and the situation is just getting worse. Within a decade, what we will have, or we are planning to have, 10 million tourists. So 10 million tourists to the old city, which is today completely crowded and full. I don't know what we can do to bring them over there, because I can't understand what other options we have. We won't have it because we won't have any more space. No, that's not true. We have space. Not all of them come at the same time. It's just a myth, as if we can't bring more people, because people don't show up at the same time. There are different ways to manage the situation. So we have different options. Either we destroy the green lung around the old city basin, or so are we going to destroy Hinnom Valley? No. Are we going to destroy another place? No. I wanted to tell you this so that you'd understand how the whole approach of saying it is politicized, how wrong it is, because lately we have done works on the new gate, and they're looking for different ways, which I know because we are looking for different ways to market the new gate so the tourists will start coming from the new gate. But also there's a problem of accessibility. Buses can't stop there, stop outside the new gate. We have problems there. I'll be happy to get questions from the crowd after. But please, I would like to ask the listeners that are very enthusiastic to keep their enthusiasm for the end. And I also want to tell you that Fleur is the only of us speakers, is the only supporter of the cable car that has agreed to join us here. So please show her some respect. Show respect to us. We will hold a discussion at the end. As I said, the alternative of the light rail is not on the horizon. We have 3 more lines at the moment that are trying to be promoted, and there are difficulties with some of them. And myself, as some of you know, I was against the blue line and some of these parts. But so at the moment, we don't see the light rail coming. We can imagine, we can dream, but it's not going to happen within the next 10, 15 years. And within a decade, well, God willing, we will have 10 million tourists coming to Jerusalem per year. So there is a need. I'm now going forward, no questions until the end, but I will be happy to answer any questions at the end. So we have a situation that will not happen. And so people who say that this is not part of mass transit to Jerusalem and to the planning of transit, I wanted to show you, this is a map that was prepared a couple of years ago, and always, this is not from now. This is the network of transit that will be in Jerusalem in the future. And still, as you can see, the cable car was always part of this plan 3 years ago, 4 years ago, by the prototype plans for transit. So this is not from people who were against or for this. This is the planning. Why cable car? After you know that we will not have the light rail, that it will take 10, 15 years before that happens. After we know shuttles only make the situation worse, it doesn't help anything, doesn't save anything. So let's just check for a moment the advantages of the cable car. You've heard all about the disadvantages. Let's now talk about a few good things that come with it. First of all, it's easier using it than using a bus. It is green. It doesn't cost much. It's not heavy infrastructure. You know how long it's going to take to build light rail in Jaffa Street, Yaffo Street? It took a decade. The red line, we don't know how long it's going to take us to finish this. We haven't even started with the green and the blue lines. It's heavy infrastructure, and the cable car is very light infrastructure, okay? The technology is quiet, it's not polluting, and the needs of land are very small. I will show you some of the simulations, and because your simulations here were not completely exact, and it doesn't really interrupt by building it and creating the infrastructure. And now a bit personal. I grew up here. It's a beautiful place, right, Gibraltar? It's a beautiful place. I will show you what is the landscape of my mother's home. Just a moment. Does she still live there? This is a video. This is a video showing how in my mother's home the cable car goes thus, and we were always okay with it. I just wanted to bring the personal point of why I'm for. I grew up with a cable car going over my home. It didn't interrupt us. It was small cabins like we're going to have. It was quiet. It didn't interrupt us at all. But let's see what happens in the world today. Grenoble. People say, okay, Gibraltar, it's a mountain. What's the connection to Jerusalem? This is in Grenoble. Nothing happens there. This is Gibraltar here at the bottom, and this is Rio de Janeiro, which means that there are patterns in the world for touristic places that are very beautiful and very unique. We are not the first and not the last, and everything is fine. And I wanted to add my personal aspect because I grew up with this over my head and it was fine. And me, Gibraltar is a British property, and we didn't say it's part of the the British mandate, etc. We didn't say that because it was practical. We couldn't get from the Gibraltar Rock, we couldn't get there by buses. It's very narrow, so it was the only way to get there. What uh, what about the supports? Well, you see that their supports, their towers, are not much compared to ours because the sketches by Emek Shaveh are not completely exact to what it's going to look like. I will show you. I will show it. Here we have the advantages of not only of a cable car, but why a cable car is going to help in this case. We have the tourist site, as I've explained before. We have the transit travel to places where it's hard to get to, like Silwan, like the Jewish quarter. We have the connection between tourism from west to east. That is, to me, something that is completely blessed. I remember we had objections against the light rail that came to the east part of Jerusalem, in Shuafat, in Beit Hanina, and people had terrible objections, but it is the best thing that happened to these populations that are now connected to the center of the city. They are connected to everywhere. Transportation at the end brings connection, and this is positive. So these are just a few. I'm not going to read you the whole thing because you guys can read. These are the advantages of the cable car to me and to the city and the municipality, to the old city. And these are some data. I don't know if you already seen any data before, but I want to show you this so you are not confused. This is from the planners themselves. Some data about the length of the cable car, how many passengers in each cabin. The sketch that you've shown us is so not accurate. You've shown cabins of 100 people. The cabin is very small. It contains 10 people. You're hardly going to see them in the landscape. I'll show you how it's going to look like. All in all, you're going to have 3,000 passengers per hour, go and back, which means it is a good solution, because if we have 150,000 tourists in the old city per week, and if we're going to double, put aside the 10 million, double tourism in the coming decade, this is a real solution. It is a real solution because this is mass transit or for tourists or for anyone else who wants to use it. Am I interrupting anyone? The speed, 6 kilometers per hour, 76 cabins. They're going to be 41 on the line, and I wanted to say something else. It's not going to be peak season, and they're going to remove some of the cabins. They're not going to use all of them when they see that they don't have enough demand just for these cabins to be flying around, hovering around people's heads. The distance, and I've added some other things that I received. I went to a press conference, and this is where I met you, I think. And I asked, because I got a lot of people complaints about the towers, and the towers in the sketch you've shown, it's like a third of the Hinnom Valley, and it's not accurate at all. The towers, because I've seen that, I know because I have the data here from the planners themselves. Are they lying to me? Okay. I will tell you what I learned from the planners. You can agree or disagree. This is what I bring to you. These are real data. If you disagree with me, I don't know what to tell you. This is from the planners. The height will be between 10 meters lowest to 27 meters the highest. And the width, and because of this, your sketches are not at all accurate. The width will start from between a meter and a half. Your sketch showed 10 meters width of the towers. This is what I saw. So this is the data from the planners. But you said not to answer, so do I answer to you? Okay. So this is the path that was chosen. If you need to finish soon. Okay, just a couple of quick things that is important for you to know. Most of the site is public site, public area in public zones. Confiscated national park. You can't build there. We're not building there. A 1.5 meter tower is not building. I will explain to you why the sketches that were presented by Emek Shaveh are not at all accurate. Just a minute. The fact that they are not accurate we've heard several times, but I want to show you. What I have sketches. I will show them to you. Just give me a chance. Just try to converge. I will bring to you what I learned from the planners. Just give me a couple of minutes to finish, then you can argue with me. These are the pillars, the towers. This is where they will be situated, and these are the sketches. I want to show you this sketch. You see the cabin on the sketch. You see this home here. This sketch is just completely false because the cabins don't hold 70 people like in Masada. It's for 10 people. I will show you and you will see the base of these towers. If you see all of the national park, look at all of it, how much space does it take? It's not really, it's 1.5 meters. Here, right here. It's as if eighth of this entire park, but this is not accurate. It's absolutely not accurate. Wait. I will show you this. So this is the landscape, okay, from the top of Micah house, and this is the landscape with the cable car. This is not a document, a planning document. These are sketches like the ones that you've presented from Emek Shaveh. Those are sketches. This is the landscape. If you say, okay, what's the most disturbing part? Is this landscape is the most disturbing one? Still, it's not cabins of 70 to 100 people that we've seen in the Emek Shaveh sketches that are completely false and inaccurate. This is how it's going to look like. This is how it's going to look like. And now I'm coming with the stations. I'm going to present the stations now. Okay, I don't have time to show you the stations. I'm sorry. Okay. I think because I'm the only one here this whole day from all the speakers that is full, maybe you should give me some more time to show it to people. 10 people. 10 people. What's the color of the cabins? I don't know. Do you have a preference? We'll let you speak to people when you have Q&A. Then you can explain. Do they know about the stations? They know. Okay. We'll talk during the Q&A. This is the landscape. Only the additional landscape according to the sketches and the planning. Completely real of this thing. So nothing here. I don't see this so terrible damage. It is a change of concept. It is a change of something we're not used to. It is a transit solution. I can explain to you about the stations, but I think you already heard about that. Okay, we have no time. Okay, fine. I'll be happy to tell you about where the stations are. I'm really sorry, Fleur. We'll answer your questions later. I have just one more thing. There are other speakers. They also should get the floor. I just would like to summarize by saying this. I think I can understand that there is a discussion here about landscape. There is discussion here about the principle of landscape and the looks of the city. But taking this to a political place, I see this as absolutely completely ridiculous. I think that the EU should not be interfering here, sponsoring you. They have no place in our discussion about our city. If they want to interfere, I can show them dozens of projects in Eastern Jerusalem where we could use their help. Nothing like this. Many projects in Eastern Jerusalem where I do bless their congratulate their interference, but not when it comes to our internal affairs. Thank you very much.
We would like to continue. Flair, I can only regret the fact that the planner of the cable car is not here to present his professional architectural position of the planning of the cable car, because what we heard was mostly sort of antagonistic to the previous speakers and not a matter of fact description of the cable car. I'm an expert of simulations and demos. Demos are a tool that serves the ones who present whatever they present, those who object to those models like Emek Shaveh, and no less, it serves the planners and the architects of the cable car. What we see here does not express the real situation of how the cable car would look like. And the discussion is not over the concrete base that is on the ground of the Hinnom Valley, but rather the sight of those cars hovering in the air at the pace of 21 an hour. I would like to now move on from talking about concrete and infrastructures to talking about spirit and culture, and I would like to call upon Ariel Hirschfeld, a professor from the Hebrew literature in Jerusalem, a researcher of literature, art, and culture, published many books and articles about the concept of the locus and also the Western Wall as the place of holiness after the destruction. Thank you. Good evening. The big issue of Jerusalem, or the big interest in Jerusalem, is not in its tourism. Its tourism is guaranteed even if it doesn't do anything, because it is the center of the world, the monotheistic world, and definitely it is a part of the centers of Islam. And being such a center, and definitely being Zion, is its very essence. Jerusalem needs no help to be that thing. And the point is very symbolic and substantial. The place where the cable car is planned to be constructed is the place about which Yuda Halevi said, Yefe Nof Mesos Tevel, the beautiful landscape, the heart of the universe. I yearned to reach you from the west. And the poet of the Psalm said that even earlier. It is the first place in our language where the word landscape, Nof, was mentioned. It was invented in this place thousands of years before the word landscape appeared, or Landschaft or paysage were invented. The word Nof, landscape, is Mount Zion. This is what is called landscape. It is the symbol, the most sublime symbol in the mythical and historic memory of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. In that sense, this landscape is not ours. And I'm saying this to the municipality of Jerusalem, not in the sense that it's not under the responsibility of the municipality of Jerusalem. Of course it is, but it is not under the irresponsibility of the city of Jerusalem, because it is in charge of something which is greater than the landscape that can be understood from what you are addressing. Jerusalem is in charge of the memory of peoples and cultures, and we are responsible for them vis-a-vis the entire world. And this thing that is called Yefenov, that beautiful landscape, which has a form to it, which belongs to the land and the sky. As David Kasutu stated it, it was very, very beautiful to the very end of the circumference, and that connects the land with that which is not land. It is a site, and that site contains meaning. The meaning of the word symbol is not understood to us today. It's not an arbitrary logo that parties and companies have. You know, a symbol is something that is embedded in culture, and it is made out of essences that contain clouds of meanings like a cross or fire or a Star of David. It's not an object. It is something that contains within it and grows into it. And it is leading to that which we call, following our ancestors, Zion. This is Zion. Zion is the reference. This is the reference of Zion, behind which there is the Western Wall. You can say many things, but nobody can take away from it its very existence as the truth, more than any relic. It is truly a wall that held the court upon which that temple stood. That's what it is. It is no less than that. In that sense, it is not an architectural structure, but rather a place, a locus. And its symbolic nature works in an unbelievable way. People talk about it when they know that they talk about a wall. Just like they say, they speak to the wall and the wall understands not. They do not feel that behind that wall God is. They know that between this wall and God, there is some sort of transformation that is mystical, that is a transformation to the sublime. They truly talk about to the non-matter. The wall says you can go as far as this. From this point on, there's silence, as Hamlet, the late Hamlet said. From here, it's something altogether different. It is a place of transition. In my humble opinion, it is the most beautiful religious place in the world, the most fascinating of all others. There's no one object made of gold. There's no artificial ritual involved. There are no temples surrounding it. Truly, everything that can be found in it is actually elevated from it and is deriving from it. And one reaches it even if it doesn't have a dome above it. And whenever you reach it, that you reach its ancestral nature. And this is where Mount Zion is all about. When you go to Siena, there is a center. Siena has a center that attracts 15 million people a year. One cannot use a car to reach that center. You have to park your car far away and reach it by foot. If you're a disabled person, people see to your needs. But Siena is not the only city that preserves and guards that inner important heart. This place is holy to us, and we should never forget this. The reason why we should guard this place is not for touristic reasons. It is national in the most serious meaning of the word. It's not nationalistic in no way, but it is national. It is a holy place. That's what it is. And the holy starts in its form as well, in that landscape. And I would like to say something about the British High Commissioner that was mentioned earlier, not about him in person, but about this fact that even the British understood what has been understood to date, and even the ones who preceded them, they understood that this place is not to be touched. And the fact is that it's survived to this very day. Do you know what it means to survive to this very day anywhere in the world, not only in our country? To actually find a way through civilization, modernism, its needs, its economic needs, the internet, the economic interest of of mankind, not only the Jewish people. The entire humankind is actually pushing toward benefits and advantages. But no, the Hinnom Valley remained as it is, the Mount Zion remained as it is, and the Western Wall remained what it was. Not that they didn't do a few terrible things around it, but they didn't destroy the essence. And what we have, and what we already have, is a most precious possession, and it's not ours in the sense that nobody can intervene in it. That's a major mistake. It is ours for the sake of others. We are the others of ourselves as well. And of course, our children and grandchildren and great great children and the other peoples who find it holy as well. But if it is holy to us, let us behave as those who understand the meaning of the word holy, as those who manage to actually delegate value to a place. Is it true that Judaism, that has argued what Rabbi Assi said, that God Almighty is the place of the world and the world does not contain it, when they don't understand what a location or a locus in this world is, they would not understand once they reach a place such as Zion that this is a Zion that should be guarded and kept and protected against those, outdated elbows of the transportation old school thought. If I may add, this solution is not a very clever one. It seems idiotic. It doesn't sound practical, not in so many ways. I will not waste my time to say why it doesn't make sense. It's a waste of time to say how idiotic it is. You can find another solution. If you have any smart minds here, I'm sure you'll find other solutions under the ground as well, if that's what it takes. But find something more interesting than this idiotic idea. Now, what does it mean to place on Mount Zion en route to the Western Wall? Because this is the sole purpose of this line. That's the final stop, not Osishkin, but the Western Wall. In other words, Zion itself is the destination of this line. Even if the cars are the size of a grapefruit, and even if their color is beige and cream, and even if the towers would hover over a stem, they would still be there. And I saw the imaging of architect Rosenfeld, and he actually did that. And he had an interest of showing this hovering, delicate thing. It is merely like mosquitoes, nothing. It is nothing really, hardly anything. Very minute, but this minute hovering thing, with its agility, is placed on Mount Zion. One could not add a word to it. This is the absurd aspect of it. Gibraltar is indeed a touristic site. There are so many other places which are touristic sites, and they have many a reason to have a cable car. But a cable car is definitely something very cute. It's even, sort of mischievous in a way. It is innovative. It was innovative 150 years ago, but it has no place here. If this place has any meaning whatsoever, then technology has to see to it. It's not yet another bus and another bus. There has to be a smarter solution, I believe. There has to be. And I can even propose a solution, but not here and not from this podium. I truly would not like to talk about that which is not a symbol. The most substantial thing here is that this is a symbol in this world. And when we approach a holy place, we ascend to it. We do not descend to it from above. You know, Agnon, in his great story, Inside the Wall, approaches the western wall and he goes down along the street, the Shalshelet Street, the chain street, and then he says, I ascend the Shalshelet Street. And he knows that every reader who knows the street knows that actually you go down that street, you don't go up. He says, I know this, but everyone who approaches the Western Wall ascends to the Western Wall. And the Western Wall is the lowest point in the old city, but its location, it's the highest of them all. And that's the way planners should think. And the planner is not only dealing with matter. Every planner, every designer is dealing with the spirit as well. But if there's any place where the voltage of that meaning, of that significance reaches its peak, then it's here, in this place, not anywhere else. And this is why the analogy with Gibraltar definitely does not fit this place, and not that of many other beautiful places. This place really is unparalleled. It is singular and unique. It is singular because it is the one, and it is that which lies at the very heart of Zionism. This is the Zion of Zionism. And if we place such a thing in this location, it only means that we forgot all that I said here. And all that I said here is not that complicated. It is the greatest symbol of Judaism, and the reason, the national reason to guard this place against any cable car. Thank you very much.
Okay, if this would have been a Technion conference, I would have closed it at this moment. But we are here, and the cable car completely disregards the existence of the Arabic village Silwan, in which it will be founded, and over its homes it will move. And however, it represents much of this the comprehensive approach to the Arabic population and its surroundings. Sami Rashid is a lawyer, and he's an expert of ownership and land, and he will talk about transparent cabins over transparent people. Good evening. Thank you very much, first of all, to the organizers, and thank you very much also to everyone who took part in funding the success of this conference. I will talk about this later on. Thank you also to the speakers, including those who support the cable car, because this way really allows us to have a practical discussion and try to convince. True, I agree that after what we've heard from Professor Hirschfeld, it's difficult to say anything else that's to the point. So I'll start with four comments. With your permission, first comment is that I've come here tonight and I've really prepared this presentation, and also I've prepared a lecture, summation of a lecture that is much longer than the time that I have to speak to you today, or normally have to speak to a crowd. But I didn't mean to talk not from a narrative discourse, or nor talk against a narrative, other narrative discourse. We don't lack those colliding narrative discourses in Jerusalem that collide at any point and any moment in the city. And the second thing, that's the second comment I wanted to make, is that I was enlightened tonight because I've been escorting this project of the cable car, which is part of the master plan of Jerusalem since they started at 1999, and some of the Disneyland that they started planning around the old city, at least as was published from these tense documents of the master plan. I remember the publication number 7, 2003. And truly, during the past 16 years, I kept thinking, God, why do we need this cable car around the old city? And this is the first time I saw this was 2003. And I want to say, really, truly, thank you, Mrs. Fleur Hassan. If I had known that the cable cart will free you from the traffic when you collect your son within less than 40 minutes from the old city, I would have recommended all the Arabs that I know, and I know they will respect this because normally they respect people of positions, that you will now withhold your objections because this is the right thing to do. A mayor or a member of the municipality wants to, quickly get from place to place. Of course, we should clear the streets for them. I'm telling about everybody's experience. It's also my experience. It's everybody's experience. That's fine. Begin Road, it also happens there, and we'll talk about that later. But this will free lots of traffic jams, apparently. And this example you've given was not the only example of the traffic it's going to give solution to. And my title is Transparent Cabins Over Transparent People because normally I represent the residents of Silwan as a lawyer in Israeli courts under Israeli law because we since the 1967 war we conquered Eastern Jerusalem same way as we've conquered the entire West Bank, and we took the West Jerusalem as part of Israel, but we've decided it will have a different law there, and we will only hold the administrative law of the state of Israel there. And so the residents of Eastern Jerusalem cannot go to courts or planning committees, any kind of point that is besides the Israeli law as determined by us. And so this is a very heavy obstacle and limitation. As a lawyer, to find this as a resident and also as someone working and talking in courts. And I agreed to come here tonight because I naively thought that I will be free tonight. At least tonight I will be free from this limitation of the Israeli law that also creates two different kinds of populations in this city, but also creates a very big limitation to Eastern Jerusalem residents, that they cannot enjoy even the description by being adequate to be protected by the international law to residents that are under occupying a state or under army occupation. But tonight I will not do what I usually do. I will also speak beyond the Israeli law because, with all due respect, it's not the law that the nations of the world see it as the one that should be applied on the Eastern Jerusalem, despite it is seen this way here. But us and another half of state in the world are the only ones who think this is the law and administration that should apply to East Jerusalem. So please allow me not to accept this, especially not the residents of the Eastern Jerusalem. Until this very day, they say about the Jerusalem municipality that it is the municipality of occupation, which is what I heard during the past 25 years from more than 90% of the clients that I represent in Jerusalem, in courts in Jerusalem. Same here for residents of Eastern Jerusalem, also those who were born after 67. When they come to Jerusalem courts, they say occupational law, occupational court, etc. Even if the word occupation is not so nice to hear. But this word is a legal term that is exact and accurate to describe our situation. And since this is the situation, and since also this is what they see themselves as in Eastern Jerusalem, we don't see them so much. And also, so in the Cabinet of Housing comment that was published in the newspapers when they approved this project of the cable car. They said it was authorized to go to the Western Wall. It will make the Western Wall accessible. We've heard 4 million people arrive every year to the Western Wall, and it's still not accessible. We need to make it even more accessible than this, including, dozens of visitors a day. Will have a solution for about 3,000 passengers per hour, each direction in 4 minutes. The housing cabinet, headed by the Minister of Finance, Moshe Kachalon, has approved today the pathway to the Kotel by the cable car initiated by the Ministry of Tourism. The plan offers a real solution to the problem of accessibility that is very severe to the south basin of the Holy City, Dung Gate, Western Wall, and City of David, and it will give solution to tourists, etc. Now, City of David, we have 200 Israeli settlers living there, and it is within Wad al-Hilwa, where we have 4,500 Palestinians living there. It is within Silwan, where we have dozens of thousands of Palestinians, but the cable car will not stop there according to the cabinet decision. It will not make it accessible. Silwan neighborhood will not become accessible. The old city also it's not mentioned. Only the southern basin, the east southern basin, but not of the old ancient city, but not the old city itself, because we have 4,000 other residents living that we don't mention, we don't talk about, we don't treat them. We also have a Tori neighborhood, we have Abu Tor neighborhood that the cable car hovers over, and we have the neighborhood of Shah Tzion, and we have Baidu neighborhood, and also in second plan phase B, we will go to the Olives Mount and we'll hover over Atur and many other neighborhoods that will not make accessible. All of these we will not connect to the cable car. We will only see them from above, from transparent cabins, watching over transparent people. And when these people come and they really want to object, when these people come and rise, and I will tell you why I'm standing here, I will tell you how I even came to this point of representing the residents of Wadi Khalwa and Silwan for over 15 years now. The first time, 2007, when I was asked to present a case to residents of Wadi Khilwe that the Herodian street was dug under their houses, and you can see it here in the presentation. And over 200 people came to Wadi Khilwe and protested because they heard and felt their vibrations, and they heard that under their houses, under the bases of their houses, they heard the digging, and they all protested and said, we want to prevent this noise. And when we started having people signing proxies and going to the higher court of justice, and only 7 people signed, and I said, nobody likes it, why the other ones don't sign? And they said, you don't know what we're dealing with, it's your first time, we're afraid. I said, why are you afraid? It's your ownership, there are courses, law, let's take it forward. And I did not understand why they said that they're so afraid. I went with my for these people objecting to these diggings, and within 24 hours they were all in arrest. Within 24 hours they were all under arrest, all 7 were under arrest, and next to them 3 other Israeli activists, 2 of them journalists, very good friends of mine. Each was arrested for a different reason. The police suddenly remembered that 2 of them had to do with destruction of a public bench, and each one had a reason that they found for them. And then I started to understand why people are afraid. Yes, Mr. Kasuto, we are the only democracy in the Middle East, and that is true, that we should be very proud of it. But at the same time, we also need to understand. We need to also understand. But we need to also understand. We also need to understand that within our democracy, we also have more than one government, and more than one police, and more than one law, and more than one population. We I'm fine, thank you. Members of the public are accusing him of lying. Sir, if you have anything to dispute what I say, you are welcome to do it, no problem. But don't talk against me, so I will not talk against you. Come to my offices tomorrow, I'll show you the protocols. I will show you in the protocol what the judge said about the policeman who he called to get instructions for this arrest. Now, this arrest actually helped because one of those people who were arrested created one of the most important documentaries ever made about the military law in Israel. And so we do live in a wonderful city. We do live in a sublime city. We do live in one of the most beautiful, holy, important places in the entire world. But we also don't live in the best city in the world. We also don't live in the most homogeneous society in the world. We are not at all a homogeneous society in this city. We also maybe more than one society in this city, and this is how we treat each other. As more than one society, we don't treat each other as different groups. We treat each other as different nations with different statuses, according to the law, even according to the way it's defined in the law. Mr. Kasuto used to be deputy mayor in Jerusalem. You know very well that in 67, the municipality of Jerusalem continued controlling over eastern Jerusalem because of military order. And we know that the Council of Jerusalem Palestinians do not take part and are not represented. And there's an argument, of course, there's an argument that they don't vote, they don't want to take part. And that's the right not to be there. It's the right to say, I don't want to take part in the council of a city that is enforced upon me by military, and according to international law, I should be defended. And so we also have this part. But the fact that they choose, and it's a legitimate choice, you can argue with this. You can say, no, come take part. But you cannot just say it does not exist. We cannot say it doesn't exist if we're democratic. We can't say to someone who sees themselves as under occupation, military occupation, as someone who sees themselves as still they have the right to define themselves differently than we think that should take place in the city, saying you have no right to also be this way. We need to acknowledge it. We need to respect it. But the fact that we are today the one controlling, as was said before me, gives us even a double obligation to be much more careful in what we can do. Anything we can do, its meaning is that we need to do it, and this project of the cable car is only one proof that we are doing a lot more beyond we can do, just in order to prove that we control the city. Thank you very much.
Our last speaker in this panel before we start really fighting is Elchanan Reiner, a historian, professor in the Department of History of the Jewish people at the Tel Aviv University, and the academic director of the National Library. His studies deal with the culture of Eastern Europe and the cultural and historic history of Israel in the medieval times, and in particular, the phenomenon of pilgrimage to the holy sites. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank, with your permission, thank the organizers, the people of the Emek Shaveh organization, and also thank the financing organizations, the EU, the New Israel Fund, that allow us to have this symposium, this open democratic symposium that is now held here, as we can see. And I would like to also mention before I start my presentation that the question, at least from the point of view that I intend to relate to it, has got nothing to do with transportation, tourism, or even design and planning. It is a totally different question, and to a large extent, we heard this from Ariel. And I'd like to open with two quotes, with your permission, just to uh, show what other people who knew how to write said. The first one is from 1210. That man arrived in Israel from Provence. His name was Shmuel ben Shimshon. People don't know. And he says, we came to Jerusalem from the western part, and we saw the city, and we tore our clothes as we should have, and we wept a big cry, myself and the high priest. We entered the gate before the Tower of David, and we prostrated on the ground. Uh, and we placed ourselves before the house of the prophets and the gate of the western wall. I would like to point not at the western wall, but rather the path that led to the western wall. A few years later, namely 200 years, maybe even 250 years, Rabbi Ovadia of Bartanora arrives, and he writes something so beautiful that is not directly related to what I'm saying, but it is so beautiful that I have to mention it. And we were 3/4 of a mile away from Jerusalem, in a place where there were stairs. And this is where we saw this glorious city. And this is where we tore off our clothes. And we moved on a tiny bit more. We discovered our demolished temple, and we tore our clothes again. And we came all the way to the gates of Jerusalem, and we entered it on the 13th of the month of Nisan, in midday, and our feet were standing at the gates of Jerusalem, a holy place. And this is the topic of my presentation, is not a point, or it's not the Western Wall. It is an area, a space, the place in and of itself, the Western Wall, the wall itself. It's the most realistic representation of the demolished temple, is the heart of an area. It is the central place in a complex without which it has no existence. The place to that location is what creates the space, not the wall, but the path leading to it. Such is the way that leads to any holy site, the path to Mecca, to Stella, and also to the temple, to the Western Wall. To the temple, it's the Western Wall. And Ariel pointed at it in a very clear way. The Western Wall is the temple, it's the place itself. The path is the axis around which that space organizes itself. It is its backbone. The pilgrimage, as it is that movement in space. It is that space that Shmuel ben Shimshon described, from the entry to the city all the way to the gate of the Western Wall. Going toward that holy place, the stairs that lead to the holy site, the surrounding landscape, the Hinnom Valley, Mount of Olives are the external circumference, and the inner landscape. The city diminishes the closer one gets to the place itself, to the Western Wall. They are the very essence of the place. And the entire area is part and parcel of that holy space, that the Wailing Wall is its heart. The walk to it creates the experience of it, and it is no less important than in it itself. And that holy state delegates its holiness to the entire space. There's no holy place without a space surrounding it. The cable car project denies all that. The essence of this holy site, the essence that we should nurture, instead of relating it to it as a singular holy place, They examine it with tools of a touristic site, yet another point that is equal to any other point along that route of tourists. The museum, Mount Herzl, Yad Vashem, Western Wall, a good restaurant, and on we go to Jerusalem, Masada, Eilat, Ben Gurion Airport. Yet another site in the basket of sites to which one arrives and from which one continues. Can we at all conceive a Catholic crusader who would go to Compostelle without by walking, except by walking in exactly the same way you cannot do it to the Western Wall. This is a very detrimental damage done to the perception of the holy site and the experience of men. The perception of location that lies behind this project is really making this area as cheap as it gets. Not only that, it is the dwarfing. The seeing Jerusalem from the cable car is not a real sight. It is an imagined sight. Leading pilgrims by that artificial way makes the Western Wall dwarfed and insignificance. One arrives in Jerusalem in a way that lacks any context. It makes the entire environment lacking any affinity to the most important element of it, and it does away with the historic essence of the place. It For example, today in an article published by Nir Hasson, who perhaps is in the audience, I cannot see him at the moment, the wonderful journalist that scratches Jerusalem topic almost every day, and he pointed at something that is the most horrific one can imagine. The attempt to convince the Karaite to move graves. Of course, the Karaite community is semi-transparent. When we think about what Sami described earlier, definitely they're not equal to us, but to move those graves, what we present, is one thing, but the most important thing, this is one of the most basic elements, one of those bricks of that, space called the history of this area. The Karaik cemetery in Gebeninum is one of the rare jewels that justify the search for routes of access, the most stupid of which is that cable car option. It is inconceivable. It's like moving the cenaculum in order to position there as some sort of a tower for that cable car. In any case, I would like to deviate a tiny bit and take it to a different direction. In this general move of actually erasing not just history, but the whole concept of holiness, the perception of that holy site, which is the only essence that I'm familiar with. This is why I emphasize that it's got nothing to do with tourism or transportation. The point of departure should be that holiness, and all the other discussions should be subordinate to it. And in that general move, and in a way that is totally not disconnected from it, we encounter a serious difficulty with the plan of the cable car as it is, and its arrival to the Kedem compound atop the Kedem Center, and bringing all those who arrive to the Western Wall through this center. If the final station of the cable car that fixating it there has far-reaching ramifications, what we find is a very transparent political indoctrination that the Israeli public, without being asked about it at all, becomes an accomplice in it. Whoever reaches Jerusalem on the cable car reaches the Kedem Center, goes all the way down to the visitor center that presents the political, unilateral, controversial perception of the people who built it. Can we transfer this undistinguished flux of people in a center that is aimed to convey a unilateral position that not the entire public finds that they agree with or maybe even object to. This actually gives us a glimpse at what is happening in the city in general and in the Holy Basin in particular. This has got no moral, ethical, historic, or aesthetic value. Nothing actually exists and survives in view of the greed of all those who decide to develop the area in a way that would be most lucrative to them. Thank you.
Okay, I will start the discussion. Let's call them to take their seats. I am calling you all the speakers, take your seats, including Rivka. Oh, the first session, yes, also. No, we'll add some more chairs. What I'm asking you is ask your questions to the speakers or generally. Public also wants to have a say. I'm sorry, if the speakers will not ask the questions to the mic, we will not be able to interpret them. I I asked and I got a permission to say a couple of words. I wrote them very shortly to make it short, okay, but truly shortly because other people would also like to say something. Good evening. My name is Yoni Shapira. I'm the chairperson Moreshet Derech, which is the International Tourism Association for tour guides, and we are the ones who see very closely the tourists that we take and take them through the experience of holiness, of a holy place, of a pilgrimage. We see them the most closely. And with this opening, I would like, before saying a couple of words, on the practical aspect of this saying that the cable car will give the transit solution. And together with this, I would also like to say something against it because people made it into a political arena. And I would like to say as a protest that it's too bad it became a political arena. It's too important. There are too many important practical arguments, but there are also cultural, religious, international sensitivities that are against it, and there's no need to also add the political aspect. And by using this political aspect and us, the tour guides, trying to create a story that is apolitical, by us in the coalition and supporting this, we are tagged as directly as someone who's against the cable car, and so we are tagged with a certain political group, which is not what we would like to have because we're an apolitical group. Now, to the point. First of all, facts. Mrs. Fleur spoke here about tourism, and she said, I think 150,000 tourists per week in the in the old city. Just simple calculation, it's 708,000 tourists. So it's not the tourists, it's Israelis visiting and incoming tourists. And the data today is 4.3, let's say, even 4.5 tourists per year. According to statistics, 2/3 are FIT, free individuals tourists. The individuals, the tourists, the small groups, not ones that are coming in big buses with a tour guide. Some of them may come with a touristic vehicle. So about a third, 1.5 million, are the ones coming with buses. Let's take about 40 people per bus, 1.5 million into 40, so over 37,000 tourist buses want to come and unload the passengers in order to get them to the Western Wall, to Temple Mount, to the ancient, to the whole city, to the Christian or Jewish quarters, where the entrance is from Dung Gate and Mount Zion. Now just imagine that the road is closed, as planners are planning to do, and 37,000 buses will now go to David Remez Road and stand there trying to unload the passengers between 5 to 12 minutes in a tourist bus. I'm not talking about a normal bus, just, I forgot my coat, forgot my camera, my water, I'm coming here, going there, descending the bus, standing in line to buy a ticket today in the transportation option in Jerusalem, there's no option to get a voucher and pay for all of them. They all, will all have to be ticketed individually. Just imagine yourself this happening. But if only one of them will say, "I'm afraid to get on the cable car," I'm sorry, just go back to your hotel. This person came all the way to Jerusalem to spend this day in Jerusalem. So in Masada, they only miss one side, 2 hours track. They will, okay, can go to the Dead Sea and bathe there. But by preventing this person the experience of coming to the Western Wall, this is something that the Ministry of Tourism is not even thinking about. And this is just one example to many, many other things that the touristic element was not even considered in them by the Ministry of Tourism, who finds here the so-called touristic solution. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much. Just one thing I want to say. Thank you very much. We will invite the speakers, and I think we have speakers that are fascinating, and we have a good opportunity to ask them questions, and maybe simply we can all just come up, if it's okay, to the speakers. And we can hold a discussion where with Q&A also to the first session speakers and also to the second session speakers. And I know that there are many people who want to talk. And I think it's also an opportunity to ask questions. So it's my honor to invite everyone, Rivka, Mike. This is a problem, I'm telling you. Yes, but let's talk about this during this session. Everybody is already convinced. Okay, if there are no questions, of course I'm not going to enforce this upon you. I'm not enforcing the questions asking. But please come, everyone else apart from Rivka, please, let's all come up. Just a second, please. Ariel, Elchanan, Mike. I'm trying to convince people to come up to the panel, and I can see it's a bit difficult. Okay, am I supposed to manage the questions? I understand. We will absolutely give room to people to speak. I will let everyone speak, but people. Speaker complains about asking questions to the speakers when people want to discuss. Public discussion. It's a public gathering in Israel. Something like that. I'm sorry, he's not speaking to the mic. Let's just try 10 minutes, and if we see... Sammy, please come up. Do we have questions or not? Do we have comments or not? I see that there are questions, so we will start with the questions from the people. From over there, from the top, we'll just give the option. We have a microphone. We need to take it between the people. I'm close to you, yes, but there are people who want to ask questions. I found people who want to ask questions. So I also let you speak. I'll let you speak, but I also want people to ask their questions. My name is Gadi Ron. I'm an architect and urban planner, and I understand a bit about transportation in Jerusalem. I disagree with Fleur regarding the question of quantities of 3,000 people per hour. If we divide it by 60 minutes, it's 50 people per minute, which means that every 12 seconds, we need to have a cabin getting on the way, and it's completely impossible. By the way, in the presentation, the original presentation, they did not mention 10 people per cabin, but 8. So that it means that this transit solution doesn't work. So the question is, if there's anyone who can give an answer to this topic. We'll take 2-3 questions, and then we'll start giving the answers, and then I will also let anyone who wants to argue or present arguments say something. Don't talk without microphone, or else we won't hear you. Is it translated or not? Yes, if you're speaking to the mic, it is translated. Thank you to all the speakers and to everyone who came here to this with a lot of good intentions and much love and anxiety and anger surrounding this very deep question. I am a lawyer, and I pray for the Bible Hill. I'm here with a friend from this Spanish church, and we pray together for the Bible Hill, for this wonderful, amazing place. I'll be very happy to hear from the speakers, from anyone sitting in this room, about how we can understand, how we can bring any hope to this. In the legal aspect, we fight all the time, we struggle all the time, but law and also technology have taken over all of our lives. How do we go back to this wonderful place and invite from this thanksgiving of being here another kind of meeting and gathering? Thank you. Please, over there. Hello. I um, I understood that there's someone who's against the cable car. It's because it's a holy place, and second, there's really a problem of transportation. The highways, a lot of vehicles, and there's the question of who is using the cable car. There are several entrances to the old city, and the way the groups go, someone getting in not through Dung Gate is usually not Jews. Some tourists go to the Temple Mount. Other groups come from other entrances, and here there's another. There's the valley from the south that is very deep. It's hard to walk it up, and also that is something where we look for a way, but that's a bit. There are groups who need disadvantage or advantage of the cable car, and then we can have another option. We can think of another option and still think that maybe the cable car is the right thing or not. This is what I wanted to ask. Okay, we'll hear one more question and then we'll let the speakers answer all these different questions. Just a short question that have to do a bit with what someone else has asked. And my question is that I hope that it will allow a discussion, but my question is to the lady who is not sitting here, and her present and her not present is very much felt. It's the only woman who tried to explain the advantages of this plan, and I only want to ask one question regarding the data she presented, so that maybe myself, I I I saw that all the speakers have given different angles and different ways of expression regarding the holiness, the space, etc., different topics like this. But my question is very simple to Mrs. Fleur, and it's really too bad that she's not here to answer it. She says, and she presented it officially, formally, 3,000 people per hour. That's the aspiration. Maybe also something practical, I don't know. And she also explains the public that there are 10 people per cabin. Someone says it's impossible. It should only be 8. I'm not a mathematical genius, but according to my calculation, it means 300 cabins per hour. Is Does anyone? My imagination is very strong, so I want to see. Let's just let them answer. I want to. If she thinks that 3,000 cabins is a good idea for her, what exactly is the capacity? What is the plan by those who believe in this idea? How does this make any sense to them? Thank you. It's a very simple question. We'll let you answer. And after that, okay, I will answer the technical aspects. No, I will answer this question, and then let the other ones answer. It's 73 cabins we're talking about in each one of these, on each one of the cables. 3,000 people per hour is the maximum capacity of 10 people per cabin. The speed is 6 meters per second. The distance between cabins is 72 meters. According to the planners, to the entrepreneurs, when there are not enough tourists, some of these cabins will be stored at the depot. So that when it comes to the numbers, technical data of the planners, still, I would like to just give a wider package. When the government is asking for a medical report from a missile experts, right? I don't think that should treat the professional spatial transport approach. So when someone is coming and they know about tourism, there's someone who's an expert of tourism, and he said, well, this also is shouldn't be disregarded. But regarding the data, the public data that were published by by the planners, there's one thing that there's no argument over, which is the technology of the cable car is like a coffee machine when you still don't know to what company you're going to go to buy it and who's going to go to the tender. We don't know the cost. We don't know any kind of technical data. So a big part of the way it is presented, a very big part, almost everything presented, is just misleading and false. And I seriously suggest you not to listen to it, but you should treat to why is it done this way. And unlike what I described when I talked about the golden path of the planning law, that with all the problems has another aspect of the population housing, and this is like an atomic plant, power plant. I just wanted to say that this discussion is leading us nowhere, which is why this option of understanding what is sustainable tourism. The world is dealing with such amounts of tourists. It's not only about how we deal if we have more numbers like 10 housing units. It's about the experience of the tourism, the whole question of pilgrimage that we've mentioned, but especially what we want to talk about is a sustainable city. We can talk about anything this way. It's old what they are bringing us, like the housing, like things like this. The new thing here, and we need to talk about this. And so what I said regarding these statements about the history, that they looked for other options, also even the second Passover also allowed to make tourism divided differently. So this is regarding the kind of discussion. It shouldn't be only about the amount and of quantities. It should be about what does it mean sustainable city, this part for the residents. And regarding the topic of the space and the values, it's new speak. To me, this whole question of does holy mean a place or a concept? So I think that what is happening now, the otherness, does the man make the place holy or the place makes the person holy? We have in the Judaism, we have this thing when three people speak appropriate things, it means that the place is holy. And so the question of how we bring this thing in relationships between two people, and regarding what Ariel said about God in the world, these things are the things we need to talk about. And there something that has to do with the planning in this city. And if this is our axis, we'll know to talk more about the place. When Jerusalem is not divided according to this, it's one thing we can talk about.
So let's just add another question. Yes, please. I'm also a tour guide. I'm also a tour guide. My name is Pepe. If you don't know me, perhaps I will say something here in a way that run counter to Emek Shaveh, but we are a democratic society and we can speak our mind. First thing, every one of the speakers convinced me right from the start that I don't think that there's one person who was not convinced. There was only one. We didn't need more than one speaker to convince us that this cable car is a catastrophic, and with it, Jerusalem would no longer be the same Jerusalem. Every word that was said, I agree totally. I, first of all, have signed the petition. I was in the committees and I expressed myself. It's true, I do not have the charisma that people have here. People talk about values, they simply smile. They don't care about what we say when we talk about values. When you talk about the towers or the size of the cable cars, they just smile and they change anything. And I can tell you, first of all, I would like to congratulate and recognize the courageousness of Sami. I'm sure all that he said was very difficult to say. Not everyone could say it. This plan is a political plan, whether you want it or not. It's true that all that the speaker has said people said it in order to stop the plan. But if we do not see this as a political plan, we'll continue to talk very nicely, we'll identify with one another, but then the cable cart will be constructed. Barkat never brought this plan to the city council. He decided on it on his own. He didn't even bring it to the knowledge of his friends. Minister of Tourism took it in and did this against a minister of transportation. Katz has a totally different plan. He wants the last station to be the Trump station. He does not believe in this plan. This is not a touristic plan. I think that I definitely speak to the point. I know that Emek Shaveh is not interested in having a political battle. I accept what was said, that to us the battle is indeed over values, but outside people will not understand that unless we do not combine all the concepts that we heard here with the political cause. I definitely commend the contribution of the fund, and I disagree with Mr. Kasuto. Jerusalem is not only for us, it's for the entire world. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I would like to answer the last question. First of all, this is from the presentation that I intended to give you, and this is taken from the Kedem Center presentation presented to the National Council for Planning and Construction a long time before the cable car plan. And according to the Kedem compound plan, there would be 3 tunnels, the entry to the old city. And I always said that even in the Supreme Court, that since the 19th century, which was the last time that another opening was opened in the walls of Jerusalem in order to bring the carriage of Wilhelm of Germany, now they're opening a new gate to the old city, which would be underground from the Kedem compound all the way to the Western Wall, so that those who will arrive by the cable cart would land on the roof of the Kedem Center, would go down 7 stories, and then go through the entire Elad presentation and enter through a tunnel into the old city. There's another planned tunnel from the Kedem compound to the Davidson Center. There would be another tunnel. So this is taken from the presentation of the designers and, of course, the tunnels that I presented earlier. And this is why there's no doubt that all those who would use the cable car would not arrive at the Western Wall, but rather to the Kedem Center with all that that entails. And then they can choose to go to the Western Wall or not. So that's the first point. The second point is the bigger one. There's no doubt that there are many disagreements among us, even those who object to the cable cars and those who are in favor of it. But still, there are 2 questions which I believe are important for every democratic society that wishes to maintain itself as a democratic society. The first one that pertains to us as Jerusalemites is, how do we want Jerusalem to look like? And the second question, that is no less important than that, is, who is entitled to decide how Jerusalem would look? And this is what we should always discuss in a very open way, to be open-minded and not to force decisions of this entity or other. And if we are discussing such a plan that pertains to Jerusalem, it cannot be done through the fast track of the National Infrastructure Committee that received the approval of some politicians. I would like to add something. The question whether the issue of the cable car is political or not does not end with this banal dichotomy that we've known in disputes between different faiths or sects, but it has a very prominent aspect. This project is so surreal, so stupid, that there has to be some sort of a good reason, some sort of a motivation that is extremely strong to have it in the first place. So I would like to point at that when you think about us financing this very grandiose project, namely, it was not even brought for public discussion concerning the budgetary aspect of it and discussing alternative options to it, do not fall into the very narrow discussion of the number of the cars, the number of the tourists, and all the bureaucratic, facade of it. That's a different story altogether. I think we'll take 1 or 2 questions. That would be the last questions. Laura and And then the speakers would say the final comments. First of all, I'd like to thank the EU, the New Israel Fund, and Emek Shaveh, of course. And I truly regretted to hear what Flair and a few others said. But it is important for me to emphasize that I think it's important that Flair arrived. I did disagree with everything she said. I think it's a terrible project that I totally object to. But this is the prevalent opinion in public that that would be an excellent solution for tourism. And I think that we should learn how to contend with this opinion. And I also appreciate the courage of Flair. She's the only one who agreed to come, of all those who lead the project, and none of them agreed to come, and I regretted not seeing that we pay the respect that she deserves. But now to the point. I agree that the issue is not the numbers because they definitely do not reconcile. And it's important to say that what Emek Shaveh has exposed with is that financial plan that showed that this is definitely not at all cost effective, and perhaps that would save all of us of this impossible, unreasonable project. Concerning the discussions of how the cable cars would look, well, the truth is that nobody would know. I sat in Howley for a whole hour, and they presented different things, and nobody has a clue, because not even a franchisor was chosen. The last thing that relates to what Sami said, and it's important to understand that the plans are not only of the cable cars, but there's another plan to have a bridge over the Hinnom Valley. There's a plan for an Omega going down to Silouan. Yes, Omega. Uh, you heard me right. And many other, a zip line, which is called Omega in here. Uh, and that would actually allow the arrival of tourists through other routes other than the Muslim market and the Jaffa Gate. Some already admitted that it has a political aspect. People are trying to take advantage of the location of Silouan in order to sell their, mementos in the shops, and prevent tourists from going into any other part of the old city. Only take them to the Western Wall and to the Kedem Center to show the Jewish domination of the old city. I think that we should truly contend with all the plans that exist. And also, the Ministry of Tourism gave 47 million shekels to Elad to build this visitor center on the promenade. It's exactly the same thing. And there too, there would be camping, visitors, a center for tourists, and also that same zip line that would be built on this open public area, but it would also Elad would be given the possibility to collect money uh, and sell tickets to people who enter their site, which is actually a national park. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, we're going to just take one last question. No, no, no. One or two last questions, and then we will wrap up the discussion. Do we have any questions, or are we done with the questions? I don't know if you hear me. Shh. I'm sorry, but we cannot hear the speaker. He's not using the mic. Is there an organizational framework that people here can participate in it to express our positions in advancing this struggle on the public level. Once we leave this hole, what can we do? I'd be very happy if people here will be able to propose what can be practically done to organize a protest, a public ongoing protest. Thank you. Perhaps we'll give the floor to the panelists who can perhaps answer the question and wrap up their main points. We will try to keep this as civilized as possible. I'm sorry, but he's not speaking to the mic. I don't know what's wrong with the mic, but we cannot hear him. I believe we can. It seems. I'm sorry, but something's wrong with the mic that he's using. If he's using a mic and we cannot hear them. They, and people. So I do not, I'm not that active in public frameworks because I mostly represent the residents and organizations in legal proceedings. Emek Shaveh is holding every now and then a symposium to which all those who object to the cable car project can come and speak their minds. There's a legal procedure of a petition submitted to the Supreme Court, sitting as a High Court of Justice concerning this project. And I too suggested that the cable car project, because it pertains to the very heart of Jerusalem, namely the Old City, would provide us with some sort of a broader public activity that would connect all the different organizations and communities that live in Jerusalem and perhaps have some sort of an activity together. I suggested that there would be some sort of a movement that would express their wish to defend the walls of the old city against the intervention of invasive technologies and the likes. Okay, הוא אמר את זה. הוא אמר. Following what Sami said, I would like following what Sami said, and I fully agree with what Sami said, I would like to see the cable car project. I would like to see the cable car project a lever, surprisingly enough, for a totally different view of what is happening. The cable car project reached the most important junctions of the continued treatment of the issue of Jerusalem, the meeting of populations, problems of tourism and transportation and the likes. And there was never before such an audacious, dramatic, and stupid project that actually brought us to reach the very roots and discuss them not as details but as a whole complex, to rethink the whole idea that we simply neglected because of loss of values. We lost that sense of awe that must be felt before anything is introduced into Jerusalem. We lost all that in the last 20 years, and I wouldn't want to name the mayor in whose term of office this started. But what I would be very happy to see today, I believe all of us, is for the cable car project would be the beginning of thinking and public activity and a general thinking about the appearance of the city and what it should maintain and what it should protect. And from here, what is left, may we keep, and what can be still repaired should be indeed repaired. I'd like to highlight something that Mr. Pepe Alalo said. Maybe we lost it a little bit inside that fuzzy context when he described how he presents things to the city council and the face they make when they hear him. As I am an expert witness on the topic for over 20 years, every now and then I am invited to the municipality as well as other great officials to express an opinion on important topics to Jerusalem. I always see the faces sitting in front of me grinning ironically, and none of them takes the subject, this weighty subject, seriously at all. I've been involved in many oppositions and many objections to many a topic, and this, the cable car plan, is actually the tip of the iceberg of that frivolity. Frivolity is even perhaps a better word than this way by which things are being done. Too few people determine too many things. The Kedem Association, with all its might, is a minority, and with its incredible power that they now have, they are a minority and nothing but a minority, and they determine far-reaching things that and the hands of those who sign and approve such plans do not tremble. And if these hands do not tremble when determining such far-reaching decisions, then perhaps they shouldn't be sitting there in the first place. I don't know what playwright would be good to describe that face of that urban choir that sits there discussing such heavy matters. Every time and time again, I look at this in absolute disbelief. And that's the worst thing of all, because under those political issues, there is mental poverty that is now holding the helm. And that is more serious than anything else. This is what Barbara Tuchman wrote her book about, The March of Folly. Okay, I'd like to thank you all. Actually, Emek Shaveh led the coalition of all the organizations that got together, and that's a very important mission. Good luck. And I do think that we had a very long evening. Many opinions were heard, and I will conclude the evening right now. But if you want to remain and continue discussing matters, thank you to all the speakers who arrived. Thank you, of course, to the audience. Some of them have already left, but the audience that had to listen to many opinions that not always were easy. We each had something difficult to contend with, and I do hope that the struggle will continue.